Thank you for joining XRO, India's first AR/VR focused podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Rebecca Barkin, who's an emerging technology and entertainment leader with over 20 years of experience. She has served as VP of Content, Strategy and Partner Solutions at the groundbreaking immersive venue, Madison Square Garden Sphere, Vice President Experience at Magic Leap, and currently the CEO at LAMINA1, founded by none other than the rock star Neal Stephenson and Peter Vessenes. So, Rebecca, I really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. You recently just came back from the Asia trip. Would you like to share some insights and highlights of the trip? Because globally, we're going through a bear market, when it comes to Metaverse and Web3. So how was the experience in Asia?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. We did 4 cities in 8 days. And we started with Token 2049 in Singapore. And I think, this is like truly a crypto enthusiast event, and set to sort of the backdrop of Formula One. So it's sort of very sexy and flashy. And I think like some of the takeaways, we were there for it was a quick trip there, but some of the takeaways there were, institutional finance is there. They're hovering, they're sort of waiting for better security and more clarity on the regulatory framework. Some of the other takeaways were, that really layer 2s and app chains are starting to really come into focus as the next chapter. You have all these layer 1s, they can provide consensus, but like consensus doesn't make a market, so you really need the emphasis is shifting towards longer term value applications, which I think is super smart, like products design, which is what you need to build that value. I think just in general, the takeaway there was this global community. I mean, it is truly a global community, and they were not deterred by a bear market or any kind of regulatory complexity in one region or another. So the enthusiasm was really high. There were like over 10,000 people that came. And then we moved on to Hong Kong for a Metaverse event, which was like a little more kind of local level, but really valuable in that there were a lot of developers there, and there was a lot of enthusiasm about the creative side of the development of the metaverse. So truly transmedia, which is what we talk about a lot. How do you bring people into the very process of developing a story? How do you allow them to access that through multiple platforms and shape the story over time? And how do you incentivize them to participate in and build and protect the community? So that was really interesting. And then we ended up in Shanghai for the Global Blockchain Summit, which, was presented by Dr. Xiaofeng, who's kind of a legend and early advocate of decentralized technology, and happens to be the CEO and chairman of Wingcheng Labs, and also Hashkey Group, which is still writing checks. So it's really great for all of us in Metaverse and blockchain. And so that was like a very scholarly sort of event. And I think, you could say that maybe the regulatory environment in China is much different. So the focus is a little different, but the emphasis really there was a very kind of thoughtful, measured, careful discussion about blockchain and AI and the ethical implications of it, the consumer and enterprise use cases. So I really enjoyed it was just talking, with scholars and other technologists about what they're excited about.
How cool is that? I firmly believe that conversations is a starter of great things. This technology is so potential. And somehow all of these technologies are converging. Earlier it was like, it was a standalone virtual reality or blockchain, but all of these are converging. And once this converges, I think, there'll be real world value, utility for the consumer as well as enterprise. So I think exciting things. And I hope that maybe your next trip brings you to India, because I think the same narrative is going on over here. The regulatory frameworks are a little that's still there, but I think even the government understands the potential of blockchain as well as metaverse and AI. So they are going all guns blazing, but it's a very careful wait and watch approach. That's from the government as well as the investors, because yes, there's a lot of money, but I think they just waiting to open up the purse to the right startups, because I think the hype cycle created a lot of these startups, and a lot of money was invested in it, and the investors were left with deep pockets, So I think with this slow and steady growth, I think there'll be the ones who are like really vested in the ecosystem and really trying to provide utility for the consumers and the users are going to win in the long run. And you guys obviously are the leaders in the space. You guys have been around, know the thing. So you've been vested. You started with entertainment, got into the music industry, and now in the tech industry deeply. Now, tech in industry, like I said, is converging. So, how do you think tech industry is impacting both of these industries, the music industry and the film industry? And how should creators or the music industry and film industry look forward to any advice or suggestions for them?
It's funny. Like, sometimes ask me about my career journey from like entertainment into tech the other day, and I'm saying, in retrospect, the choices make a lot more sense than they did at the time. And I think like I was just chasing story and connection, which I've always really loved, however it was going to be delivered. And that just happened to be increasingly digital by the time I had graduated college. So I'd say a common thread throughout my career has been first that love of storytelling. So books, film, music, art, this kind of very special artistic capability and need really that humans have to envision something and then move others to feel it like in their bones, So I happened to join the storytelling industry, like just as it was being upended by a bunch of young engineers who were just really eager to share things with one another and had found a new way to do it. And that happened to sort of inadvertently, I think unintentionally, at least some of them say now, reset the value of content and set off a series of events that I think ultimately ended up being pretty damaging for creators and their communities in the long run. But it was also, there was an interesting trend that started to happen, and this is kind of the up and the down with it, was that you suddenly, because digital provided a much cheaper distribution path, like you could suddenly look at international catalogs of music or indie music or critical darlings that couldn't get distribution through traditional means because they didn't meet certain requirements. And you could like blast those out to the world. And that was super exciting. So at EMI, from the very start, and I think it's been a theme, this sort of transition of like, how does entertainment keep adopting new ways of technology, of storytelling through cutting edge technology? And how do you stay in front of that versus playing catch up? Because really the music business really got caught off guard. And then I went into film just in time for film to go through the same damn thing. Where Blockbuster was getting crushed and Netflix and video on demand and day and date releases were starting to happen. And again, it was like, okay, now I can look at this international film catalog. And then I took that with me and it just became a theme. So all the kind of new tech that was coming out, it was like, how do I stay ahead of that? It was always a race to stay ahead of that. And then I made a total pivot and went into positional tracking technology. And I think that was really, for me, like the start of a whole new chapter, which was the immersive chapter. So in that position, which, I mean, it was me and 23 engineers just working on, gesture and positional tracking. And, if you remember at the time, Oculus hadn't they shipped, I think, but without controllers. And like no one really had hand tracking in any experiences. And so that really got me close to developers and understanding, like, what do you need to unlock content, really great content, in this kind of spatial, interactive 3D environment. And just by nature of working at this intersection of like artists and directors and creatives, and then emerging technology, like it set me up really well to go to Magic Leap, where I led the studios group there for 4 years and developed Tenendi, which was an interactive music audiovisual experience with the band Sigur Rós. And I led the redesign of the operating system and the interaction model for Magic Leap 2, which is out now. And then I went on to Sphere because it was like, how can you get any bigger and any more mainstream than putting 17,000 people in 160,000, wrapping them in 160,000 square feet of 16K, LED. And I don't know how much you know about it, but there's haptics in every chair. There's, spatial audio, like a laser beam, precision to your ears, and 4D tech. So you could affect the temperature, the humidity, the scent, like everything, right? You just had all the tricks. And I was there talking to Neal about adapting his IP for an experience at Sphere. He said to me, I said, how's it going? And he said, well, Facebook had just rebranded to Meta. And he's like, I figure I could either keep traveling around the world and complaining about it or talking about how it should have been done, or I can get back to building it the way I had intended. And so he started that company, which was LAMINA1. And almost from day one, they had asked me to come and be their kind of third co-founder and CEO. So that's what we've been doing for the last year, is trying to lay the groundwork for this open version of the metaverse we believe in.
Lovely. How cool is that? You've had like a fantastic journey, and you've been around from the music industry to the film industry to the immersive industry, which is, I think, changing everything. And through this conversation, what I'm hearing is that, I take the line from Peter Vessenes. He talks about dematerialization and democratization. Music industry, which used to be the LPs and stuff like that, got digital and it got disrupted. The same thing happened with the movie industries. There was in India, there was the single screen theater, then it went to multiplexes, and then it's gone to all digital, and things like that. So that's being disrupted over there. And I think the crux is technology. Technology has played such a big role in the democratization and dematerialization of both music and movies. And immersive technologies is going to play a big role over there. You have been Magic Leap, and one of the game changers, when it comes to AR glasses. What are your views on this transition? Because we all keep on talking about this transition from a 2D to a 3D world, where we'll be going from carrying technology to be wearing technology, where the entire world is going to be the screen. What are the challenges? What are the frictions over there? And when do you think we will, or what do you think will take us to transition from about?
I remember having this conversation right when Magic Leap had launched in 2018. And one of the gentlemen on my team had said to me, like, aren't you terrified by how few units we've sold? And I was like, no, like, that's what I expected. What I'm terrified of is if we haven't planned for that in our runway. I remember at the time saying, I think it's going to be 10 years. And I think that's probably pretty close. So, I would say that this is obviously, like I said, a multi-sided market, right? So, there are a number of things that really need to happen to shift to this paradigm in the mainstream sense. And I think form factor and price point for sure. I will say, like, all the old Magic Leap alum, we all watched WWDC and we were like, come on, like we were just like waiting for it. Because so many of our team members too had gone to develop it. And we just had this nudge that, like, surely they have underestimated how hard it is to build really beautiful, high quality content and deliver it in a way when there are no standards. The tech stack is fragmented. Everything's expensive. You're making new parts, new chips, new optics, all that stuff. And so I was a little disappointed by the form factor, but because I think it's still kind of big. And ultimately, like, I think you're just really going to struggle to get mainstream adoption as long as there's something that big on your face. But I don't think that that's what they're going for right now anyway, Apple specifically. Like, the point is to start to familiarize this in the market. There's a lot of education that needs to take place. But on the feature side, I've always thought that hand tracking and speech recognition as well as like really seamless, really strong spatial audio implementation, like multimodal interaction on the hand tracking side was going to be really critical, because ultimately what you want is, as much as we made fun of Minority Report, ultimately what you want is to be able to have heads up. Like you want to have your heads up, and you want to be able to talk naturally and gesture naturally and interact with things in a really sort of low friction way. And so until we get there, it's going to be real hard to convince people this is better or easier than the way that they currently do things. And I think on the content ecosystem side, we used to talk a lot about practical and emotional appeal. So, I always felt like you need both. And a lot of what I was focused on in the early days at Magically, and through immersive that's for consumer, has been about like that emotional sort of side of things, of like, oh my God, I didn't know that this was possible, and inspiring a kind of awe and euphoria that like is memorable and sticks with people and moves them to think about things in a new way. That's great, but it doesn't make moms buy it. And really, like, what you need is like you need to couple that with practical appeal. So it's like, holy hell, you've opened my eyes. And then, wow, I didn't know that I could look inside of my like semi-barren pantry and see what's available, use object recognition to be able to tell me everything I have in there, and then serve up recipes with what I already have at home, and then give me, a way to cook it. That's like, make my life easier, save me time, save me money. Like, you need those both. And right now, I think VR certainly out the gate kind of went too heavy gaming. And I know why. It's because that's like the developers that were building the things, that's where they are, and they were in the engines, and they know how to use it, and they're enthusiastic about it. It's easy to get them to adopt. But I think we in part got delayed, even in the early days of VR and the content ecosystem, by not talking more about enterprise and more about learning and training, and how absolutely effective it can be at increasing retention. And it, even in like a manufacturing setting, like AR decreasing mistakes, and, in a surgical simulation, and like these things that are practical appeal and really show people what good the technology can do versus just being fun. And I think that's what you really need, both of those. And then of course, tooling and standards is super important. I mean, tools just mature, so they're kind of boring to talk about. That just happens. The platforms get slicker and it gets easier to use. But standards are still a huge issue for people building immersive content. And, I was at the Venice Film Festival recently because I'm on their Venice production bridge and financing team. And so I get to meet with all the creators and look at their projects and talk to them about their business models and whatnot. And I think one of the things you really have to understand to know how tough it is for content creators to make great content for these platforms is like how they get funded. And they're funded by the platforms, because the platforms need someone to make content. And so then they fund them, and they get locked into a platform and to that platform's standards. And then the tech is evolving so quickly that they deprecate it. And you end up, losing all of that value and learning. And it's hard to keep your content ecosystem fresh, and it's expensive, and you need volume. So I think like those are probably the biggest challenges, like form factor and price point, features, and then like that ecosystem being having both like equal weight, emotional and practical appeal and value.
Right. And I hope that those problems, frictions gets sorted, soon, because we are at or 2D interface of mobiles. I mean, it's lost. It's not that it's lost its utility, but there's no further innovation. And I mean, people are still doing these foldable phones. So I hope that we go from carrying technology to wearing technology. Now, Web3, would you be able to explain decentralization? Because, there is Scott Galloway who talks about the false promise of Web3, and he says that decentralization is nothing but re-centralization. So maybe it'll be great if you could explain Web3 or decentralization? Is the world ready for decentralization? What will take for the world and businesses to embrace
franchises? We first of all think about the metaverse at its simplest as like the continued development, integration, and adoption of digital experiences in our lives, right? We spend more and more time in those experiences. They're becoming more and more robust. They're 3D, they're persistent, they're interactive, and they'll be just increasingly kind of elegantly woven into our day-to-day life. That is a lot of data that's being collected, right? And we're kind of traveling through this. Eventually, we hope that you'll be able to move really fluidly in and out of these digital experiences, and you'll access them a multitude of ways through a lot of different platforms. We'll leverage biometrics, to log in, AI to optimize things and personalize things. And all that while these devices and the tech giants behind them will have at their fingertips really every conceivable piece of data you could imagine on you and me from home to work. And the question is like, who should have that data? And should there be a single point of failure with some of these centralized companies that have very different motivators and agendas than we do? And I think our answer is you should own it. You should own your data. And your identity and your data and your assets should move with you through this internet of experiences. In principle, that is what Web3 as a movement is about, which is, if the metaverse is about the extension of our lives and this sort of like seamless interconnected worlds, physical and digital worlds, then Web3 is really about ownership and restoration of our sort of data and privacy as we fluidly move through those worlds, right? And I think part of what Professor Galloway's statements were spot on. I mean, like there was the original premise of what crypto was supposed to be about in the white paper. And, I was not a crypto enthusiast. As a matter of fact, when Neal said it was being built on blockchain, I was like, blockchain, cool. And then there was this sort of the economics element of it that I had to really go sell myself on. Like I had to go understand it and deep dive on it and say, like, what is the value versus, or what is the potential versus the reality? Because I agree with him on some of the contradictions he's called out. Like, you do have crypto whales. You do have a lot of these organizations that decentralize on the surface, but really they're just sort of trading value through a network of companies that they have sponsored, set up, have ownership stakes in, and they're growing this whole ecosystem that is seemingly not in the control of one entity, but it still has tremendous influence from a very small group of people who are just new people in power. But they're people in power. They're just new ones. So I agree with him that there is this sort of inherent contradiction. And I think the original premise, which was to serve those who were underserved by centralized systems and were, perhaps on a local level, willing to say, in our community, this thing has value and we will accept it as having value. And that will allow us to sort of establish a local economy and prosper, and nobody should crush that, right? I do believe that that's pretty cool. But what has played out is just very different. And to some degree, you're battling a very human instinct to acquire power. And I think that's tough. And I think it's why some of the DAOs haven't worked out so well. Anytime you trust the public to govern themselves, you're going to have that human instinct to take over. It's just, I know how to do it. I want to do it. I should have more rights than the next person. I should be able to vote. I should be able to control where the money goes. That's a real problem that we have to reckon with for sure. But I think governance, you can do that with proper governance. And we haven't really seen anyone do it really great yet. I know it's a big emphasis and a big focus for us at our company of how are we going to, if we're really going to upend content creation, distribution, and monetization and connect creators directly with their fan communities to incentivize them both. How do you how do you support that economy, leveraging these kind of Web3 principles about ownership and privacy and prosperity? How do you encourage that, but then not let in or let the sort of crypto gambling volatility sort of side of things run away with the farm? So I think he's right about some of those things. He's also a marketing professor. So if you think about who this is really challenging, like the last 40 years, 20 specifically, where all of these applications were coming up and being funded to, these two guys in a basement come up with an idea for an app in Silicon Valley. They end up getting like tons of money on Sand Hill Road. They have no business model. And it's like, don't worry about business model, like growth mindset, just like grow where were we going to go? Like we knew people would become the product. And that's what happened. And so I think we have an obligation to pull some of that back. Like we've learned enough from what has happened with Web 2, when you have really centralized control and you have tech platforms that have become, the media and the medium and the payment and the creator, and it's too much. Like it's too much power. And it's resulted in giving away content for free for engagement, and you subsidize it with advertising dollars, and you're able to subsidize it with advertising dollars because you're giving them really specific data on people, and you're telling them exactly how to manipulate them, and then you're doing it via the platform to drive engagement. So it's like we're in this really disgusting cycle of like exploiting people's emotions and mental health for ad dollars to then support content being given away for free to then drive the growth of tech platforms. So it's got to be undone. Like we have to unwind this somehow, because like for our own health. And AI, I think, has been more effective, much more effective as a movement and a very trendy hype cycle right now. But it's scared people in a way where I think they're starting to talk about this line of like exploitation and centralized control, and who deserves to control that AI, and what it tells me is the answer. And suddenly people got, IP and rights, and, people got really concerned. And I think Web3 was trying to do that, but just didn't do it as effectively. So I think it's a long sort of meandering answer, but it's a really loaded question,
Right.
Web3 really just was about, at its core, empowering people in the sort of in a very capitalist, innovative, society that was driven by a lot of, massive investment in these tech platforms. So I think it really was just about taking power back, and AI just has been much more effective cases.
Right. Yeah. So I think we've got into a very weird world, and somehow as a creative, I couldn't understand that. I think entertainment is the only industry where creators create something but have to give it for free. While any other businesses, whether you're a doctor, engineer, whatever you do, I mean, there is a certain kind of remuneration. But then creative industry has gone through this transition where that's the only industry. And I think creative industry is the most fascinating or the most fantastic industry, because I think it revolutionizes. It's the power of revolutionizing the world, because it allows you or pushes you to go bold, go beyond, dream. But that's the only industry where the creators who create this fantastic content have now gone into this a very competitive zone where you have to create but then depend upon the ecosystem, the tech industry, because that's what we're doing. I mean, you create content, whether it's music or whether films. Now, most of them is largely going out free, unless until those are those like really huge budget, big budget, powered by these big labels and big production houses. So yeah, and you rightfully pointed out, that we have become the product. And how do you unwind this? How do you pull this back? It's something, I mean, I don't really know, because there is generative AI which has come in and does this, whatever we could do. I mean, humans could do they do it much better, but they obviously they're taking our data, doing it very differently. They're doing text to speech, text to image, text to 3D, text to video, text to world building, and the rate at which this tech stack is growing. Mm-hmm. I do worry about the automation bit, that what happens to the world, what happens to the creators, what happens to, it's not just the it's also the tech industry, the coders, because there's text to code and so on and so forth. This acceleration of technology and doing some insanely awesome things as well as scary thing also. Would you have like a quick thought on this automation bit, this crazy acceleration of technology, and where is that going to leave us?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this a lot lately, because even in our own community, like Lamina has, we're in beta now, but we have a community of over 50,000 creators in our Discord that are talking about these things all the time. And ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion and Midjourney caused quite a stir in sort of the creative and in the gaming community. And I think people being concerned about just sort of this like flippancy from tech about the value of creative. And it's kind of like, well, you'd see all these tweets from technologists and being like, you better get on board, like it's going to, like, concept art is dead, RIP concept, you're just like, come on, guys. I think the one thing I always say to creatives is like, take solace in the fact that all of these innovators on the tech side that are building tools for creators, like 98% of them have no idea what it takes to tell a story that sticks around for 100 years. Like none of them. And they don't even know how much they value it. Like, so I think with AI, there are some ways where for creators, it is going to really help them in that way as a tool. But in terms of it becoming the creator of content, which is another thing that you hear people talking about all the time, is like, it's going to be able to, and it can, take a photo and your voice off of Instagram and then like make, deep fake videos that, and the dissemination of this sort of like nefarious agenda and, content is really like, yes, that will happen, but will also happen is we will adjust our sensitivities and we'll up, fraud detection. And I think what you'll end up getting is like a ton of content that's just like mediocre. Like you'll be able to make it really fast. There'll be a ton more of it. People will like not be sure if it's real or not. And so they'll desensitize to it a bit. And again, the really great storytellers and the people who know how to build really long-standing franchises will continue, I think, to thrive and separate from the pack and maybe even be more valuable than ever because of just the amount of junk out there. And I think you've seen this in the blockchain space, like with NFTs as well. It's, you make something in Midjourney and, you put it out as an NFT, or you do some voxel art, you put it out as an NFT. The crypto community comes on, pumps it up, and suddenly it's like it's everywhere, and they're getting funded $200 million to continue that. You're like, but what is it? Like, how does that sustain? Because there's no story behind it. So you're starting with the like financialization of a picture that has no background or depth to root in, and now you're going to try to build back a story that's meaningful to people long term. And I just don't really buy it. I just don't think that's how great stories are told, because it's fundamentally, it's human. It's about human connection. I ultimately think, like, I don't see, at least not in the near future, AI becoming creative that we as humans find satisfying. Like, it's kind of like Uncanny Valley, right? Like you look at other things and you examine them as a human for their human nature. And so I think, as much as there are humans behind LLMs, like I don't think that they'll create with the same level of emotional effectiveness. So I think we'll still do all right, but.
Right. I really, really hope so. LAMINA1, what makes it unique from all the other platforms today? For
blockchain and the sort of world that we're in, we're definitely outsiders. But, fundamentally, LAMINA1 is offering content creators an alternative to what I call the platform trap, something that is beautifully designed, a blockchain-based platform that's beautifully designed, with the blockchain aspect being damn near invisible. And on that platform, you can create, you can distribute, and you can monetize in a new way. And I think what our goal is really to get us to become sort of a center of origin for non-traditional content distributed that like doesn't fit other formats and can't get distribution, a home for these new projects, that then, dissolve the barriers of like, today's kind of siloed digital and app ecosystem. And I think when you do that, you then can really, like, when you're able to give that IP creator their value back and empower them to be able to create something and distribute it in a new way, then their fan base also can be rewarded and seen in a way that they've never been able to be seen before. We talk about, like, I was talking about Taylor Swift the other day, like everybody, but, she's an economy unto herself. And for consumers, for her fan base, there's a million different ways that people are interacting with her as a brand or as an artist, every day, whether that's ticketing or merchandise or an immersive experience she might do someday, or streaming and then creating playlists that they then share with their friends. Like, there are influencers within her community that are mega fans. And right now, that's sort of like that actioning against their interests or their values isn't really available anywhere. It's not available to the artist who may want to reward them. And it's not available to be capitalized on by even to me as the fan. So I think the economy, like the economics, gets super interesting when you're able to directly connect those things and really reward people for engaging with the franchises that they adore in a whole new way. And so our goal really is just to be this turnkey open platform that really seamlessly integrates and curates all the integrations that creators need, whether that's a Unity and Unreal SDK, whether that is automating the process of creating legal documents with partners like Creative Intel, which this is amazing. It's a software platform that is so long overdue, to enable artists to basically teach them about the music business and then automate the process of creating contracts. And we're like, fantastic, like automate that to a smart contract and you can use it for music NFTs. But I think this sort of suite of tools that creators need, if we can tackle that and we can get people building, and we can continue to grow the community, then we can change the marketplace and distribution. And really, that's what you need to do, because you can't solve just like one thing, because the reason why artists give up so much is for distribution. And those platforms have distribution and big dollars to back it. So the open source community is going to have to really demonstrate beautiful product design mindset and real simplicity and get into solving a real problem with value. Like, if we can show that the royalties generated from an indie film that was distributed in a whole new way, was angel funded for $5 million and made $45 million and was distributed on a decentralized network. And there was, a sizable royalty outcome there that really changed creators' lives and funded their next projects, like that's what you need. You need to prove it out. And that's what we're going to do, is just build a platform that makes it really easy for people to do that.
Lovely. We wish you the very best for it. Who are the early artists and developers on the platform, and what are the resources available for these creators and developers?
We have some announcements coming up, so I'll hold on talking too much about specific creators. We do have about 23 early access program partners that anyone can check out. I think they're listed on the website. Everyone from HTC to Qualcomm on the platform side, to things like Studio Lovelace on the AI side, and Walker World, which is building a universe, like a Web3 universe with really high fidelity gameplay. Mirror World, which is mixed use, city scale, high fidelity tourism mixed with like commerce and mini games and UGC. We have partners like that. And then we have a bunch of sort of artists and directors and cultural partnerships that we're going to start to roll out in the next few months, but I'm going to keep those under wraps for now. But on the resources side, like we have token grants, which artists can use for whatever kind of utility they want to be able to leverage, whether that's like a premium feature or whether they just want to use it to help stake with other, utility for other creative artists in the community. The goal is really that the more people that release creative projects there, you're not just experiencing the success of your own creative project, but of the success of that entire creative community. And then you get to, into funding, and it's really exciting. But for the moment, we have token grants for partners who have really interesting projects, both on the infra side and on the creative side. And we have an ecosystem grant in the LAMINA1 ecosystem fund as well. It's going through like some retooling at the moment, but we did cut early checks to Krista Kim's project, Zero.xyz, Studio, and Calvin Chan, Legitimate, which is, doing RFID for embedding like chips in actual sneakers and doing kind of NFT and secondary market tracking, and some really, exciting projects there. So that's some of the early stuff. We're still pretty early. We're only about a year in, but I would encourage anyone who's interested, like, to get in. You can sign up for the beta now. You can open up a hub, which is our version of the wallet, and it's just really experiential. You can claim your name in the metaverse and just start playing around.
Is this open only for US-based artists and developers, or is it also open for Indian global artists? And
no, it should be international for sure. It is, I don't think we're on mobile yet, which I complained about already. But because when I was in Asia, I was like telling people, I'm like, okay, now just go to LAMINA1, hit the button. And then it was like, we're not yet on mobile. So the team has gotten the message on that. We're working on it. But yeah, right now you can sign up through like, your laptop, go to the website. There's a button there that says like, I think explore the hub or sign up. And then you click the button and you can set up a hub, which is like your profile and theoretically where all of your transactions will be, that sort of show the different things that you've done across this interoperable app ecosystem and the value that you're accruing because of it. And then it will surface other Web3 content, and whether it's film or music or games, which I think is kind of a unique feature, because a lot of platforms are focused on kind of one specific genre or the other. But I think what we really need is just for people to understand the breadth of different types of content that you can release in this format. Like, you're not restricted by your box office volume or, radio play is a bad example, but your number of streams. So it's a good way to just get visibility for like how much you can do on a platform like this.
Right. There are a lot of Indian companies, creators, developers who are still playing a wait and watch game. Any advice to them?
I think part of that we have to do a better job with like just getting to use cases versus using the buzzwords. Because I think at some point, and you made this point earlier, but like we're using one word no one understands to define another word that no one understands, and it's just freaking people out. So I think like I had a director ask me the other day, she's like, kind of avoided NFTs and Metaverse, and like just felt like it's like another hype thing, and it'll be over soon and we'll move on to the next thing. And I just didn't really feel like I needed to do it. And I was like, well, really, it's just content. You're just making content. She was like, well, okay, so I'm just making content, just like I normally would make content. And I'm like, yeah, it's just content. Like, you want to make a music video, you make a music video. Like, we're not asking people to fundamentally change the way they develop today. I do think that like I spent a lot of time talking to creators about how to think about storytelling and immersive. It's really hard to get creatives to develop in a new way by force. Like, they have to play around and learn it because something caught their attention. And so I think we have to do a better job with content that catches your attention and distributing non-traditional formats of content, these transmedia type stories, and just get them to play with it. But I think, it's easy as hell to use, play around with ChatGPT or go on a Midjourney and give it a 5-word prompt. It's worth it just to stay on top of it and explore it and try a couple VR experiences. Like, see what you think. You might hate it. Try AR experiences. You might really think that that's the way it's going to go, but it'll spark your imagination. You don't have to do it today, but at least start exploring it.
Right. Fair enough. And I take this thing that simplify things. You simplify things, there'll be more and more people on board. My last question to you, Lamina1 roadmap, and paint a picture of what the world is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years.
Just in the near term, I'm not going to go too far on our roadmap because I think my team will kill me. But the Unity and Unreal SDK integration we launched today, actually. So if you're building in those projects, you'll be able to implement LAMINA1 in there. So that's great because you want to be where people are. Shortly after, we'll then roll out a series of what we call spaces that you can explore, which really are like, some will be built by partners and some will be featured creators within the L1 community. Some of those will be 2D, some will be 3D, some will be short form, some will be longer. And then we'll roll out items you can actually use within those space and then start to roll out like interoperability. So like, let's demonstrate bringing one thing from one environment into the next environment. Like, can we make this really fluid exchange of interoperability and prove it out for people? Because right now it's pretty like hypothetical. Right now you can go in there, you have your identity, you can choose your metaverse name. And then we'll continue to roll out these creator tools on the infrastructure level as well as like creative integrations. And of course, we're on the road with OMA3 and the Open Metaverse Standards Forum and IEEE, like trying to solve some of the platform standards issues as well. But I think for right now, we're really just like, let's get people to the platform and let's have them start, building and playing. We're EVM compatible. You can do that today. You can, do an NFT today and write a smart contract. And eventually we'll have decentralized storage, premium features, and identity premium features. I'll give you what I hope happens for the end of the decade. I would really love to see identity coupled with like my ownership of my data, and social media being sort of forced to roll back some of its practices that I think have been pretty predatory in terms of political divisiveness and mental health and consumerism. That really, like, if you look at the stats, like, I mean, at least in the US, I'm not sure, I'd be interested to know how it is in India, but social media has driven our mental health and, into record lows. Our life expectancy is decreasing for the first time in forever. And I think there is just this exploitation of people's data for advertising models that has been really, really dangerous. And so I would hope that by the end of this decade, we have really rolled back businesses that are solely reliant and built and funded based on people or the product, ad models. And I think on the immersive tech side, I think you'll see more and more venues like Sphere start to come around. I think you'll see a lot more mixed use spaces where you have like, commerce, hospitality, immersive entertainment kind of mixed into one, like a lot of the great projects going on in Saudi. And you'll have multiple ways for people to join those, what they can join from any platform and participate in a number of different ways in the digital experience and then be there live and get something additive out of it. So I think like AR will become much more mainstream. I think it'll take the lead in terms of immersive. And I think glasses will sort of become an accessory. I don't see like all day, every day going on. And I don't think we're ready for chips in our brains. And I don't think we're putting a lens in our eyeballs just yet. But I think that like, I can see people for specific use cases putting on that really slim form factor of glasses that provides really valuable additive information to the real world. And I think that would be a step in the right direction versus everyone staring at their phones and being sort of exploited to high heaven with ads. So that would be it. Is like a evolution away from the ad model in tech would be great, and the adoption of AR in sort of a practical everyday accessory sense.
Thank you, Rebecca, for taking time and being part of the podcast. It was lovely understanding your insights. You rightfully pointed out that we become the product. The entire world, I think, is suckers for something which is free. And the search is free. WhatsApp calls are free. Social media is free. But, when things are free, we need to understand that we become the product because the data is more loaded or more valuable than oil now. So that's the reason these big tech companies are hoarding our data, manipulating our data, monetizing it, and turning into these billion-dollar conglomerates. And you also pointed out that social media has become a breeding ground for mental illness. And it's not just because of the reasons of cyberbullying or harassment. It's also because there's so much fakeness on this social media. Whenever I get onto it, I see that everybody is posing, everybody is handsome, everybody is beautiful and sexy. They're all traveling. Everybody is having the most fantastic meal. Everybody is happy in their personal lives or business life. Everybody's married life is awesome. So there's so much of fake things going on social media where the youngsters believe that is the true reflection of reality, which is completely not true, because when you go behind, you'll understand that most of these people who put out these pictures are possibly sad, depressed, but that's the way life is. Life has got its ups and downs. We have these financial wellness, health wellness, emotional wellness, and then we also go to the downside, and that is part and parcel of life. And once we start accepting it, we'll realize that the struggle makes it more fun. When there's something easy, then life is not fun. So I hope that the people listening realize and avoid the mental illness trap, and I hope and I wish and I pray that we truly get into building applications and technology which is truly decentralized, which benefits everyone. Once our applications are loaded with utility, I think the tech conversation will go out. Then we won't call it a metaverse, a Web3 or whatever. We'll just call it something which helps us. And I hope we come into that world. Really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see and hear, then please press the subscribe button because we cannot do this without you. Thank you, Rebecca. Really appreciate this.